Okay, so we are now in week number 8, and welcome to J115, Introduction to Corrections. And Porter is moving fast, and so we're going to just go ahead and get started. Share the screen. Won't be before long here with this. So let's get you some info. As you can see, it gives my instructor information there, and I always invite you to pay attention to that, along with the additional course information that requires research. Some students said they didn't know about it, but it's right there. And then I also comment about it during my lectures. And then letting you know you'll lose 2 points if you don't do research. So if you just use the textbook as a reference and a citation, you're going to lose. If you use the textbook and some others or another, you will not lose. Okay. All written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body and references at the end. Sometimes you don't get that. You put references at the end, but no citations in the body. That's what most of you do. A few of you do do citations and no references. But most of you, the error that is made with APA is you fail to provide the citations in the body of the paper to support your statements in the paper. So it's very important. Then I also remind you that I run Grammarly checks on all assignments. I have shared with many of you that it is critical that you use Grammarly to check the percentage of plagiarism. There's a plagiarism check that is in Grammarly. Now, if you just run your papers through Grammarly and don't do the plagiarism check, then you're going to have a problem. So you want to make sure that you do that. There are times when you may submit a paper, and then the first thing that I do is I run it through Grammarly, and if the percentage is above 25%, I will deduct 26% and above on your assignment. So you can figure that if your points are 20, then I'll take out 29% of that, and that's a lot. So the key that we want you to do is provide critical thinking in your papers. We want to know what you think about the information that you've researched, about the assignment. We want to know your thoughts. We want to know your positions. And we want you to do some analytical applications. That is kind of critical thinking. And critical thinking, as you will recall, is one of the transferable skills that we talked about during week 1 in the open house, and the importance of critical thinking. We don't want you just to be copiers and pasters. We don't want you to just complete the assignment, but we want you to put some thought into it. Sometimes you can challenge the material and information, but I don't mind as long as you support it with with research. And then never use Wikipedia. You will lose points for that because Wikipedia is not a reliable source. So anyway, just a few reminders for you. Each of you, by the way, with the Grammarly, you have your own Grammarly accounts. And if you're having trouble with Grammarly, I highly recommend that you set up an appointment with one of our tutors and TutorMatch who are very well trained in the understanding of Grammarly and how it works. So, okay. And then finally, here on this first page where we get to the announcements is a reminder that our last lecture is week 10. That's coming up 2 weeks from today at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so there will not be a week 11 lecture. A student asked me, do we have lectures on odd weeks? I said no. If you refer to the first page, you'll see our schedule is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's how easy you can remember. So if it's an even week, then with the exception of the open house, then you can always know that there's lectures, unless there's an emergency that's come up. But I've been able to do lectures every week so far. Now let's see what the announcements hold for this week. We're in Module 8, Parole, and you're reading Section 7, 8, 9 of the text, and then look at the activity defining parole, its issues, and then conversations with a parole officer. We're going to share that with you in a little bit here if you haven't looked at it already. But I want to remind you about your assignments, your discussion posts, parole violation officer role. Many of you have submitted some very cogent points as to why individuals violate their parole. And so that initial post was due yesterday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then your reply post is due by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on Saturday. Okay. Finally, be sure to complete the written assignment, why parolees fail and what can be done. It's kind of all coming together with the discussion forum and the topic for your papers. And then finally, the quiz. Again, all of these are due this Sunday coming up. And so you want to make sure you get those done. And so anyway, we are at the end, and I do encourage you to finish strong. And then remember my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. So you don't want to let adverse situations stop you from being successful. So now let's look at the calendar real quick. Here we go. And this is where we are right here. We're in week 8, and so your reading assignment I gave you, your initial post, the lecture right now, your reply post, your written assignment that I discussed with you a few minutes ago and we'll discuss even again, and then finally the quiz. Remember, the quiz is timed, and you want to make sure that you have gone through the materials before you take the quiz so you can perform well with the quiz. Your next quiz is going to be week 10, and then of course you know week 11 you have a final exam. Okay, so also I want to remind you that next week, not this Sunday, but the first Sunday in March, which is the 5th, in addition to your written assignment, your course project is due, final paper, and you need to review those requirements in Module 1 and 9, and the rubric for the final project that I provided to you. So you want to make sure that you've done that as well. So that's just a reminder, because next week we don't have a lecture. So now let's look at the assignments for the week. Let's look again one last time. There we go. 2 pages. Not 1, not 1.5, not 1 3/4, but 2. And explain 2 or 3 of the top reasons and what can be done to assist parolees in being successful. Make sure you cite your sources, APA format, and it says more about APA, visit the online library and the resources tab, but I've also mentioned it to you over and over again. And then make sure you run your papers again through Grammarly before you submit them. All right, and always provide a cover as well. I've been kind of generous. I haven't been deducting points or cover sheets, but it's very important. And then your discussion post, which we talked about. And then finally, your quiz, 10 multiple choice questions. It's a time exam set for 10 minutes. Then you only have one time to do it, so once you start it, you can't stop it. And so you want to make sure that you do these. Once time expires, the exam will be automatically submitted. You don't have to submit it, or you can submit it before the time if you're finished. And I want to remind you that you're supposed to take this exam by abiding by the academic misconduct policy. You want to make sure that you're not cheating on the exam. You're not trying to find information during the exam. But the point of the matter is that you won't be able to do it because you have 1 minute basically per question. So it's very, very important. And those are the assignments for the week. Okay. Just for a minute, just a reminder, assignments for next week. Your written assignment, again, is a 2-page paper dealing with mental illness. So you're going to submit that. And then also your discussion post. But what I want to particularly point out to you is your final paper is due. It is very important that you get your final paper in and make sure you read these points, incorporate your research to present your findings and solution to the challenge identified in your interview. Remember, you should have done your interview already. You previously gathered information, applied the feedback, and so forth. And there should be a minimum of 3 scholarly sources explained in the project. And should focus on the challenges and solution. The purpose of the research is to deepen your understanding of the challenges and solutions. And then the project should conclude with your recommendations based on the information of your interview and your research. Again, this will be run through Grammarly. And then the requirements are found in Module 1, Introduction to Project and Field Visit. Very, very important that you satisfy those minimum requirements. And again, as I have said before, and I'll show you one last time. Let's see. Let me go to it. Oh, here we go. From our faculty guide that I supplied information to you with the rubric, the course rubric for your Module 11 project. And this is how you're going to be graded with Module 11. Provided the link to the e-portfolio message box and so forth. So let's take a look at what the rubrics actually say. Let's go. Okay, there we go. It's up. I forgot it. In this one, it's up here. Okay, let's look at it. So you have all the assignments from week 2, 4, 6, 7, and 9 in here. Those are all you should have completed, and 9 is the last one. That's next week before you do that. Okay. Now, what you want to do is, let's close this out, is go back. Let's put this up here. Okay, so your scoring rubric, this is how it's going to be scored. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm just sharing you some information so that you will know. But I've given guidelines already, rubrics for your written assignments as well. Just passing that on so you'll know how you get graded. Just notice that you keep losing points for this APA. If you don't have them both, you're going to lose 5 points. Okay, and then Module 10, okay, we will leave that alone there. Okay, so now let's go back. Again, your course project, make sure that you satisfy the requirements as set forth in Week 1 Introduction, Module 1. Very important. Students have asked me where to find it. It's right there in Week 1. Okay? So now let's go back to where we are today. Let's get to the lesson content. So parole. So what is parole? Parole, as you already know, involves an individual who has been incarcerated for a period of time, and that individual has demonstrated during the period that they're incarcerated that they should be given an opportunity to not serve their complete sentence, but to be released early, and to be able to, matter of fact, some states like Illinois, mandatory supervised release, the word parole is not used a lot anymore, but the point of the matter is that you are under supervision of a parole officer, and the parole board is who decides whether or not you've satisfied the criteria. The parole officer's job is almost the same as the probation officer of a person who has been released on probation. But the parole officer's job is kind of different because of the fact that that individual in parole is still could possibly go back to jail for violation of parole, just like probation, and can be revoked if the individual does not follow the requirements, such as reporting to the parole officer, notifying the parole officer if you change your address, staying clean. You can also end up be subjected to what we call drops or drug tests, random drug testing, and those kinds of things. So parole is kind of a form of helping you to reintegrate into society following the time that you've been incarcerated. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, you should know that with the revocation of parole, you know, we tell our clients, oftentimes as attorneys, that if you violate parole, it's by preponderance of the evidence. And it's pretty clear that if you had a rule and you didn't do it, you can be sent back to the penitentiary to serve the rest of your time. And so what happens in a situation like that is you're not given additional time, as in violation of probation, but you will spend the rest of your time behind bars. And so the key thing is that individuals want to stay out of jail, and so they will want to do things to help themselves. And we're going to go into some of the issues that ex-offenders face when returning to the community and so forth. Okay, so hold on here. Again, those are the assignments. We went over that already. And so we're going to do, we've already kind of did this, parole, what it is, and the rules and conditions are very serious. And it says that the state maintains control over the person until the sentence has expired. In other words, let's say you had 5 years and you're released on parole after serving 2.5 or 3, then for that 2.5 to 3 years, you're still subject to the control of the parole board. And again, as I said, if you violate, you can be brought back to court, and the judge can send you back to prison. Now, says parole is either discretionary in determinate sentence or mandatory for determinate sentence. When it's discretionary, is indeterminate sentencing. That is, the authorities have, or the judge has, or the parole board has a period at which they can decide anywhere along the way. And usually they operate on the basis of your good behavior, that you seem to reach a stage while you're incarcerated where you have decided to accept responsibility for what you did, and they see you head in a new direction. Now, mandatory sentencing is when that person has served a certain period of time and that they are automatically due, and presuming they've stayed out of trouble while they were incarcerated, then they will be granted parole or early release. But again, as I said, the parole board is going to determine when parole is actually granted. And then it also says the board is also the authority on revocation matters. Like probation, parole is considered a privilege, and it is not a right. There are students who sometimes get confused, and inmates should understand that it is a privilege and not a right. Parolees, like probationers, are entitled to retain due process rights. That is, before there is a revocation, you're entitled to a hearing, and you're able to present evidence to explain why something might have happened, maybe it was unavoidable, and you could present witnesses and so forth and so on. And you have the right to cross-examine those witnesses and all those kinds of things before parole is revoked. So your due process rights do remain in place. Regarding the parole officer, they have, as I said earlier, many of the same roles as the probation officer. They monitor you, make sure that you're compliant with the conditions. You know, one of the ways that parolees get in trouble is by, when they're released, they start to hang with people who have been convicted felons. And you know what happens in that situation is that there are some violations. But the parole officer is to try to work with the person to work with reintegration, as I had stated previously. Parolees may be subject to intensive supervision or GPS or other surveillance. What that means is they can have a monitor on them. That's part of the whole process, is to make sure that persons are where they're supposed to be or doing what they're supposed to do in those situations, that they are obeying the conditions of parole. Usually the parole officer helps with getting that person education, and I've already indicated over and over again, I'm a big fan of education in terms of minimizing recidivism, and that many repeat offenders find themselves going to prison because of lack of education, and also help in terms of getting employment. A lot of jurisdictions have companies that are willing to hire individuals who have been paroled because they want to give them a second chance. So you have kind of like second chance programs and so forth. There are also vocational programs to help parolees to matriculate into society, giving them a skill, a vocation, something that will cause them to be able to be a positive force to society when they're released. Says parole is much more effective when support programs are in place, such as, first of all, housing. It is very important that parolees have a place to stay, and that they will, again, be stable there and be able to notify the parole officer if there's any change in housing. There should be constant counseling as something to support, because keeping in mind the individual is coming from a place where they've been incarcerated, they've been around people where they may have picked up bad habits, and so now they need to, it's almost like deprogram kind of type thing, but to help the parolee to be able to go into a new direction, as I said. Employment, job training, we talked about that, social network, and connecting, helping parolees to connect with their family members. Now, it is a problem if one of the things that affects that parolee is that they're part of a family that's known as convicted felons, and that does happen. There is a serious problem with them, and even in those situations, they may be placed in a position where it is in their best interest not to even be around those individuals. I have some family members myself, and I've never been convicted of anything, that I don't spend time with around, because some of the things that they're subjected to do, their lifestyle is different from mine. The point of the matter is that there needs to be some connection with positive forces, and negative forces should be eliminated. Now, one of the problems that I see that cause parolees to return to prison are a number of factors, and some of you have pointed those out in your discussion post this past week. One of the main ones that I always think about is treatment for a drug problem. If an individual is incarcerated, they should start to address that issue and help that person to deal with that issue of being addicted to drugs, because we already know that there is a strong correlation between addiction and crime. How does that work? Well, it's very simple. If you need a drug and your body is craving and calling for it, then you're going to do whatever it takes to get that taken care of for your body. And you're not in control. And so as a result, you will go out and possibly even commit crime and violate your parole, and you will end up back in within a short period of time, I should say. So what needs to be done is that there needs to be a continuum as after the person is released with the drug problem, is one of the conditions of parole needs to be for them to participate in a program that will help them to deal with that drug issue. Another issue that is very serious in terms of causing individuals to go back to the penitentiary is, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is lack of opportunities to be employed. Again, reaching back to the point that, people need food, shelter, and clothing. And so when you are released on parole, if you don't have an opportunity to work and make some money, an honest living, then you're going to go and you're going to do something dishonest, which results in a violation of your parole, and the end result is you're back in prison. So those are a couple. Again, education, as I said, and I harp on that constantly harp on education. And because I've actually seen individuals go in a new direction based on education and then vocations. So we've kind of dealt with the issues in general, and the materials that you read this week deal with some of the same things that we've talked about. So now, before we adjourn, I want to give you an opportunity to listen to this interview with the parole officer to understand some of the issues that individuals face. And so take a few minutes and listen to this. It's about 15 minutes, so we're going to let it run, okay?
My name is Lance Coburn with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I started with the Department of Corrections in 1995. I started as a probation officer, working with adult misdemeanors and juvenile and all level misdemeanor felons, whatnot. Did that position for many years before becoming a supervised release probation officer, working mainly with adults, solely with adults. Did that for many years before I took the current position that I'm working in now as the supervised release agent and CIP, the Child Incarceration Program.
And both programs are the equivalency of parole. These people have been to prison and are serving the remainder of their prison sentence in the community.
That is correct. All the clients that I work with have been sentenced to prison, have served their immediate time in prison, have been released on their remaining third of supervision in the community. However, on the CIP program, or Challenge Incarceration Boot Camp program, those individuals are released early and inmates still living in the community working off their prison sentence.
Okay. Okay. So what does that mean, that you get everybody who comes out of prison?
When an individual is sentenced in the court system to prison, those individuals that go to prison are evaluated at the institution to determine their risk to public. If their risk score reaches a certain level, they are assigned to an intensive supervised release team. I am a part of that team that supervises some of the more risky cases in the state of Minnesota. Those would be cases of murder, possibly all sex offenders that are a significant risk to public safety, and level 3 sex offenders, level 2 sex offenders, but not necessarily all sex offenders are considered a risk to public safety. I'm also a CIP agent. CIP stands for Challenge Incarceration Program. We handle the individuals that come out of the Minnesota Version Boot Camp. And so we have a boot camp system for early releasees who have met the criteria for early release.
But they have gone to prison in order to participate in this boot camp.
That's correct. I am a supervised release agent now. My primary, I work mainly and only with individuals who are released from prisons.
Okay, what are the qualifications to do your position?
The qualifications to be what's called a corrections agent are a 4-year degree in corrections or an equivalent background such as sociology, psychology. Also, an internship of 400 hours or equivalent work such as including precinct investigations, case management. You might look at other types of employment, such as case manager within the institution, and other case management type jobs within the community, and other social work type jobs in the state.
Okay. Is there a typical day for you?
Yes. Sundays are very typical. You wake up, you get dressed, you check your vehicle. All of our contacts, all of our work is in the community. We operate out as an intensive supervised release agent. We work out of the car. The car is set up like an office. It has a laptop. It looks like a lot like a squad car. We review the previous days or from the last time we worked to current, notes that were included on all clients. I have sometimes, a lot of times, a to-do list that never seems to go away and just gets longer and longer each day. Review that and then basically start setting up a contact list of the people I'm going to see for that day. Then load up my car, check my vehicle before I leave, and then head out onto the road.
So once you're on the road, are visits typical home, because you're at their home, correct?
In their homes, workplaces, and any place that they talk to an agent about frequenting. Could be a community service site, could be a support group meeting.
Okay. So what might happen at a visit?
In a typical home contact, an agent will head into the residence, do a brief walk through the residence to make sure that everything is status quo, that there's nothing out of the ordinary going on. Once that has been established, we start to work on basically the housekeeping things. What conditions have you met to this point? The standard conditions, a lot of our people have to do community service treatment, things like that. We discuss those housekeeping things. And then we start looking at case management, looking at things that the clients are interested in, looking at some of their high-risk needs and areas, and start addressing some of those needs and start planning for the future in hopes of addressing some of the problems they've had in the past in order to prevent those from being problems in the future.
Okay, so are there ever like violation issues or safety issues for you?
Absolutely. Every day is a safety issue, not only for us within the home of our clients, their peers and associates within the home, but also for us, and for a lot of people, might be people from the immediate surrounding of the community. I have spent a lot of time in North Minneapolis, which I think a lot of people are aware of, a very significant area for violence. So you always have to have situational awareness in regards to what's going on around you. We are trained in agent safety training courses in order to prevent or to reduce the incidence of safety issues with agents, not putting yourself in a position where a client has you locked in, de-escalation skills in terms of if something is going south, if something starting to look bad, you're able to work that through in a manner that de-escalates the problem down to hopefully a lower amount.
Okay. We've talked about release of offenders and some of the barriers and issues that they face. Do you see that with the population you work with?
Yes. These individuals have gone to prison with not much care to their lives. They don't have 401k plans. They don't have retirement plans. They haven't had, some of them never even worked a job for any length of time whatsoever. And so when they're released, those are tremendous obstacles that need to be overcome. Within the institution, there are programs developed for those things, interviewing skills, job training programs within the institution. So some of that is had within the institution. The biggest problem is housing. They burned a lot of bridges going into the institution, and so bridges meaning family. They burned up their family members. They burned up their friends, and so when they're released, they have nothing, no one. And a lot of the times they'll come up here from another state, commit a crime, and so really they're stuck. They have nowhere to go, nothing to do. So housing is a big issue, employment is a big issue, but that's for everybody.
Okay, and so you work with them on those issues. You help with those issues also?
I do. Not necessarily directly with the clients in regards to their individual housing needs, but we are always in search of a better housing in the areas that we supervise. That is one of our mission statements. That's one of our goals as agents is to find suitable housing for clients that we can use on a regular basis. For those individuals who don't otherwise have housing within the community, there are a lot of programs out there, especially in the metro area, that are willing to rent to housing.
Okay. Touched on violations earlier, but we've talked about the violation process and it's a little bit different than going to court. Can you talk about the hearing process and maybe your role as an agent during that process?
An agent plays a dual role in that process. Although the agent's in the home working with the client to assist them in their facilitation of a better life, when it comes to a violation, in an hearing, an agent becomes a prosecutor. And in that the hearing is set up typically at jails. So let's start from the beginning. If an agent comes into a situation and the client is found to be in a violation situation, an ISR agent does carry handcuffs, and at that point makes the determination as to whether or not they're going to place that person in custody. They can do it themselves, or they can call for backup from local law enforcement, which is always advised. In most situations, as ISR agent, I tend to work the situation myself because that's not been too much of a problem for me so far. But anyway, when the violation occurs, the client is placed in custody. A warrant is issued for their arrest through the officer of the day. And that is placed in I typically transport the client to the local jail. At that point, we establish a report based on that violation and any other violation that may be out there. That report is submitted to Minnesota, the Department of Corrections Hearings and Release Unit and the State Public Defender's Office. A hearing is scheduled, and those three parties come together: the client, the hearing and release officer, and the public defender. The agent is also there and acts as the prosecutor. They present the evidence to show that the client has violated their conditions of release. The defense attorney, of course, defends the client, and then the hearing officer weighs the decision and determines whether or not there has been a preponderance of evidence to show that that client has violated their conditions of release, and if they have, whether or not the violation is sufficient enough to send them back to the institution, restructure them, or dismiss. Restructure would be adding the conditions, addressing the fact that there was a violation, finding that there is a suitable cause to put either accountability into place or to put other aspects into place, such as a client using drugs may be considered for a evaluation and possible for a treatment program to assist them in that behavior.
So sometimes intermediate sanctions can be used instead of reincarceration.
Intermediate sanctions are agents will have at their disposal in the field, and what they'll do is it acts like a revocation within the institution, but without the hearing officers. The agent will ask the client if they're willing to participate in this program, and then at that point the client may be willing to engage in those things that we talked about in the restructure, such as further chemical dependency programming, an intermediate sanction that would be a loss of privileges. They may even volunteer to go on to an electronic monitor to address accountability issues.
Okay. And you mentioned the hearing officer. Is that like a parole board in other states?
It would be like, I think a parole board would be set up more in a factor of having multiple individuals at a table evaluating a person's adjustment to be released from the institution. I think it's more like the judge in this particular case. I would equate it more to the judge's role. They weigh both sides of the evidence. From the defense attorney lays out their side of the story, the client lays out his information, and then the probation officer, parole officer, ISR agent lays out their violation. The hearing officer / what I would consider the judge takes all that information in, determines whether or not that person is in violation or not.
Okay.
And then the sanction is a resolution comes after that from that hearing officer / judge.
Okay.
It's an administrative position.
Okay.
It's called an administrative hearing.
Okay. Do you have advice for students today who are interested in this field?
This is, as everybody knows, the state is suffering significant losses in revenue, and jobs are hard to find in any field. My best advice for people who are coming in the field is volunteer. Get into the agencies, do pre-sentence investigations, do case management, work with kids, get to know people in the field. Once you're in the field, have a good idea of what it is that you want to do in the field, and be an innovator. I think 20 years from now, it might not look the same way it did 20 years ago. So I suspect what we're going to be looking at is technology, how they can bring that to the forefront, how those individuals coming into the field can be an asset to that agency, not necessarily somebody who wants to sit behind the desk all day or who wants to just collect a paycheck to do a job so that they can and collect a paycheck to do the job to do what they want to do elsewhere. So those who really love the job and really bring something to that agency that are really going to make a difference in how we see corrections in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was very good. This is the first time I've seen it, but you know, very comprehensive interview. The interviewer asked some cogent questions, and one of the things that stands out is that the process, as I was describing, involves a hearing officer, and it's not a judge. I use the term judge because I'm so used to that as a lawyer, but a hearing officer makes the decision as to what, and then I did tell you that it was by preponderance of the evidence, because it is, as it was pointed out here, an administrative process, and that there are a lot of, as was pointed out, intermediate actions that can be taken. Here's the deal. The deal is the objective is to help the parolee to not have to return to incarceration. Given the parolee, depending on the seriousness of the offense, a chance to adjust and helping them. And as I was happy to hear that one of the intermediate possibilities is an individual who is on drugs could be given the opportunity to be able to get some help for that. Because I already addressed that issue earlier in this lecture, that it's unfair to release a person who hasn't been treated adequately for the problem, because they're going to go back to doing the same thing. And so it is on the parole people to make sure that that person is given a fair chance to get some help. Now, again, one of the key factors is the parolee must be willing to participate. So if the parolee is not willing to participate, you know, it's one of the key things that, you know, I know about people who get treatment from drugs and alcohol. One of the first things is accepting or admitting that they have a problem. That's the first step, and once that takes place, then you're able to take those things and then get those to the forefront and get that individual interested enough. If the person is in denial and not accepting the fact that they have a problem, then it's not going to be easy to help them in that. The other thing that I noted is that the requirements for the position are 4-year degrees, bachelor's and above. I think that's very good, because this individual is operating, and I always look at the parole officers, probation officers as akin to counselors, because their roles involve counseling and involves not formal, you know, counseling in terms of what I'm talking about, not therapists and that kind of stuff. But what I'm talking about is sociological counseling, because they're interacting with individuals based upon the situations and circumstances that people face. The other thing is that it is not a desk job. It is as this officer pointed out, he operates in his car. That's his office. Well, the point of the matter is that all parole officers that I know are mobile. They're never at their desk. Very rarely are they at their desk. I mean, they'll have a place they'll meet, and they'll actually meet the person a lot of times at places where they're being either treated or where they work. They'll check them out, those kind of things. But they try not to embarrass them. So they try to minimize the activity at work and places like that. So then they may come to their office. But my point being is that there's a big part of the role of the probation officer or parole officer in this instance that puts them akin to a bounty hunter. That is, they're out searching and looking for individuals. He mentioned about the GPS or the monitoring system that oftentimes is used in those situations. So I think that this 15-minute session kind of ratifies or supports the things that we talked about earlier that I presented to you. So I'm going to go back into the classroom, and at this point, I'm going to end this session. I will be sending an archive to everybody. So, good night. Remember, you can reach me. You know the rules, reaching me if you have any problems. Please, 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 please refrain from contacting me and asking me at this particular point about doing assignments from week 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because you gotta keep up with these assignments, and it's very, 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 very important that you do these assignments timely. If you have a problem, you need to communicate with your advisor and me for sure. Okay, and so I'm going to say good night on that